What's up guys, Virgil here for JRPG Central, and today we're going to be talking about Dragon Quest XI's. A demo for the upcoming Definitive Edition dropped just the other day on the eShop for the Nintendo Switch, and like all of Square's demos these days, the progress you make in this demo will carry into the retail version. I will say, however, that the sheer length of the demo is pretty crazy. It took me around 7 hours to get to the end of the demo, and having played it before, I definitely skipped a lot of cutscenes and dialogue. If this is your first time with the game, I could see it easily taking you like 10 to 12 hours if you really took your time and explored. And at that point, it's a demo that is longer than some retail games, which is just crazy. Regardless, this means I have access to a huge chunk of the game, and I want to give you guys my initial thoughts and impressions. Unfortunately, however, this demo does not give you access to the much anticipated 2D mode, so this video will be entirely over the standard 3D mode. Let's get into it. First off, let's talk about what is probably one of the most important aspects to any Switch port, and that is the game's visuals. To be honest, this is an area where I really wasn't expecting much. We've all seen the trailers, and it has very obviously been dialed back in terms of graphical fidelity. But I've gotta say, when you're not watching it in a compressed YouTube video, including the very one you're watching right now, it's remarkable how close it actually is to its console counterpart. Of course, there are cuts that had to be made. Resolution takes an obvious hit, floating somewhere around 900p when docked if I had to guess, and around 720p when in handheld. Keep in mind these are complete guesstimates by eye, as I have no way to actually measure the resolutions here. I'll leave that stuff to the boys over at Digital Foundry. On top of that, foliage and other details are reduced, draw distances are drawn in a bit, and the poly count on character models seems to be ever so slightly less than. Other than that though, this is the entirety of Dragon Quest XI running in the palm of your hand. The UI and text is super sharp, and overall, I'm pretty blown away by the conversion. Surprisingly, I have also not had any performance issues whatsoever. The game has basically stayed locked to 30 frames per second the entire time. Again, another impressive feat given how good this still looks on a mobile device. To get things to look and sound just right, however, you will want to make some adjustments. For one thing, just like the original, the music volume is way too loud. So loud, in fact, that at first I couldn't hear the dialogue box sound effects, and thought they had maybe taken them out in this version completely. By default, the music volume is set to 10, but you'll likely want to crank this all the way down to like 3 or 4. I'm not kidding, it is that like overly loud. I don't know why the mix is so bad by default. Another setting you'll want to change is the game's default brightness. The brightness is set to 50, and while it looks fine, when I compared it to captured PS4 footage, it actually made everything look a bit washed out. Now, the game's lighting is slightly different than the PS4's in general, but I also think this was done to make up for the Switch's lack of brightness when playing outside, so I would recommend bumping it down just a little bit. Setting it to around 35 to 40 made everything look just right. Next, I want to discuss what was one of the biggest selling points for me, and that is the inclusion of the orchestral soundtrack. If you watched my Dragon Quest XI review, you'll know that that was basically my one big complaint with that game. I just thought that the soundtrack quality was just not there, and not only in terms of the quality of the tracks, but also in the variety and overall composition of the tracks. And while this does not solve the composition or variety issue, we do at least get much higher quality versions of the tracks that were already there. If somehow you didn't know, the original version of Dragon Quest XI did not include an orchestral score, but instead included an electronically synthesized one. For audiophiles like myself, this really stuck out and put a damper on the overall experience. Thankfully, Dragon Quest XI's remedies this by including the option to switch between the orchestral soundtrack and the synthesized soundtrack. However, there is one catch. Not every track in the game gets an orchestral version. For instance, while there is a beautiful rendition of the town's theme during the day, once nighttime rolls around, it transitions into the same old MIDI track you're familiar with if you've played the game before. This isn't really surprising, as it was never said that every single song would be orchestrated, but it is somewhat disappointing. In addition to the orchestral tracks, there are numerous and tiny tweaks and quality of life improvements in Dragon Quest XI's. Honestly, too many to list in this one video, and not all of them I have access to in the demo. I will go over the ones that stuck out to me though. First and foremost is the ability to speed up battles. This is probably the second most important feature in this re-release for me personally. If you go into the game settings, you now have the option to choose between 3 different battle speed modes: normal, fast, and ultra fast. Sadly, and I was worried this might be the case, this isn't implemented in the way other JRPGs have done it. In most games, you can toggle this on and off at any time during battle with the press of a button. Unfortunately, in Dragon Quest XI's, once you set it, it's set, and you can't really change it. I mean, you actually can change it mid-battle by digging through some settings, but it's really not the cleanest solution, and a simple toggle implementation would have been much better. Nevertheless, I'm happy this is in the game at all, and just like the Final Fantasy XII remaster, this will probably make me wonder how I ever played the game without it. For returning players looking for a fresh experience, there are some hard mode type modifiers called the Draconian Quest. These allow you to change different elements of the game like enemy difficulty or experience earned from weaker enemies. And other options put certain restrictions on yourself, like the inability to use armor or purchase items from shops. These options are clearly meant for veteran players who are looking for a more challenging experience, and if you're one of the people who found the original too easy, I highly recommend you check these options out. I almost forgot to mention, but there's also a Japanese dub available for the first time, as the original version shipped with no dubbing at all in Japan. I've messed with it on and off, and from what I've heard, it's pretty good, though I'll probably be sticking to the English dub for the most part. Lastly is the very self-explanatory, fun-sized forge. Before, if you wanted to forge any new equipment, you could only do so once you reached a campsite. But now you can do it at any time from an item right in your inventory, which is pretty handy. At one point early on, I accepted a quest in which you needed to forge a gold ring, and in the original, you had to leave the town, go to a campsite, go to the forge, forge it, and then go back into town. But here, I just immediately popped into the forge, made it, exited the menu, and finished the quest. So this is a great addition that I think will save a lot of people a lot of time. Overall then, Dragon Quest XI's is truly shaping up to be the definitive edition of the game. While its visuals do take a slight hit, it's not nearly as stripped down as I expected. The ability to take it on the go, coupled with the new quality of life changes, new story content, and 2D mode, have all but guaranteed that I'm going to be double dipping on this one. But I mean, let's be real, you all knew I was going to buy it anyway. But what do you guys think? Is this enough to warrant buying the game again, or will this actually be your first time with the game? Let me know in the comments down below. Anyway, that does it for this first impressions video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, be sure to leave a thumbs up to help the channel grow. And as always, thank you so much for watching. I hope you all have a great day, and I will catch you guys in the next video.